This is Mike Lingo from Rocket Proforma, and today we're going to ask the question, is WeWork a tech company? And we're going to use some of the skills that we've learned about financial statements to answer this question. And so here is this is the income statement that WeWork submitted when they were going to IPO. And, take a look at this. It has the revenue, it has the expenses, it has a profit or loss from operations. So it's an income statement, and we're going to use some clues from here to answer the question, is WeWork a tech company? So first of all, what's missing, right? We've just walked through some templates of what the income statement is supposed to look like. There are some things missing from this income statement. So take a look, and let's actually compare this to our template. So here's our template: revenue, cost of goods sold, gross profit, operating expenses, or sales, marketing, research, and development. That adds up to operating expenses, and that gives us an EBITDA number. WeWork's financials look a little bit different, right? So the first question is, why did they look different? Unfortunately, the answer is they were trying to hide something, so let's see what they were trying to hide. Hint number 2. So one of the things that's missing here is the gross margin, which is calculated with the cost of goods sold, but we don't see the cost of goods sold here, right? We do have a clue to what the cost of goods sold might be, which is location operating expenses. That sounds a lot like the cost of goods sold, because that's the core thing that WeWork needs to do. It needs to operate these locations. So if we consider that to be the cost of goods sold, we can use that to calculate the gross margin, and then we can compare it to the gross margin for the typical tech company. So I do a separate video about this, but WeWork's gross margin, if we use that number, is about 20%. And what are some tech gross margins? Do you remember from the other video? Well, let's see. Salesforce's gross margin is 74%. Google's is 57%. And Salesforce is purely virtual, whereas Google is physical. Amazon is physical. There are warehouses and forklifts. Apple sells a lot of devices, but all of these numbers are a lot higher than 20%, right? So that's a clue that we're looking at something that may not be a tech company. And actually, 20% is the best that WeWork can do. They've actually typically done a lot worse than that. So these numbers are not at all the gross margins of a tech company. And it's not that the gross margins aren't the operating expenses. They're not the sales and marketing costs. They're not the costs of running the business. They're just the cost of delivering the product. So this doesn't smell like a tech company at all, actually. So hint number 3, now that we have the gross margins for tech, why don't we also look at the gross margins for real estate? And the closest company to WeWork that I could find that was publicly traded is something called IWG, which does a very similar business. It's International Workplace Group, and it used to be called Regis. And these are workspaces and offices on demand, right? So it sounds exactly like WeWork. And magically, their gross margins are right around 20%. So the next hint is WeWork not only doesn't have tech gross margins, it has real estate gross margins. So hint number 4, on this income statement, it's hard to tell what the expenses really are. But in our template, we had a line, let me ask this question first. What do tech companies spend a lot of money on? Think about that for a second. The answer is building technology, right? They're technology companies, so they spend a lot of money on research and development, which is building new technology. And so if you look at WeWork's income statement here, where are they building new technology? The only thing that looks like it could be new technology is growth and new market development expenses, right? But that doesn't really sound like technology. That sounds like something else, but let's assume that a chunk of that is used for technology. But let's look at what is typical R&D spending for tech. So it's around 13.6%, right? But if WeWork has buried their research and development into something called growth and new market development, chances are they're not spending 13.6% of their revenue on building new technology. So again, this is more evidence that WeWork probably isn't a tech company, right? And we can tell this just from looking at the financial statements. And again, I would say if WeWork's not going to create a financial statement that looks like a proper income statement, they're probably trying to hide something. So, again, that was hint number one. So this kind of detective work can help answer the question, is WeWork a tech company? And you can use this when you look at other companies. This is one of the things that Warren Buffett is really good at, is looking at these financial statements and understanding the story that they tell in order to decide what's actually happening underneath the hood of the business. So thanks again. This is Mike Lingle from Rocket Pro Forma, and hopefully today we've helped answer, is WeWork a tech company?